There's a place on Earth where you're not allowed to be born, and, strange as it sounds, where you're not allowed to die either. This isn't an urban legend, it's the law. If you become seriously ill or you're nearing the end of your life, you're required to leave the town. And if you die suddenly, your body won't be buried there. Why? Because the cold is so intense the ground never truly thaws. A virus or bacterium in a body buried back in 1918 could still be alive today, waiting for a chance to resurface. Welcome to Svalbard, a Norwegian archipelago perched at the very top of the world. Here, in the town of Longyearbyen, everyday life is a test of endurance. For 4 months each year, the sun simply doesn't rise. It's the polar night, total darkness, 24 hours a day. People go to work in the dark, eat lunch in the dark, and come home in the dark. And if you decide to step outside for a walk, you'll need more than a thick coat. You'll need a rifle. It's mandatory. There are more polar bears on these islands than there are people, and they're not zoo animals. They're predators that see you as prey. So why would anyone live in a place like this? Why would Norway, one of the richest countries on Earth, maintain a community in the middle of eternal ice? The answer takes us straight into the real secret of this country. Because Norway isn't just breathtaking scenery. It's a nation that learned how to tame the impossible, and that's exactly what we're about to see. Still in Svalbard, there's a structure that looks like it was pulled straight out of a sci-fi movie, the Doomsday Vault. Deep inside, hundreds of meters underground, sit over 1 million seed samples from almost every corner of the planet. If there's a nuclear war, an asteroid strike, or a global climate catastrophe, Norway is holding the key to restarting humanity's agriculture. They're protecting the world's future. But how do they protect their own? If you had visited Norway in the 1960s, you wouldn't have found a rich country. You would have found weathered fishermen and rural communities counting coins just to make it to the end of the month. It was a tough life, with absolutely no glamour. Everything changed on the eve of Christmas in 1969, and the mood at the time was basically, we've lost. Foreign companies had been drilling the North Sea for years and finding nothing but water and mud. The American giant Phillips Petroleum had already decided to give up. They sent a message to headquarters asking for permission to abandon the last well. HQ replied, "You've already paid for the rig lease. Might as well drill a little longer until the contract ends." It was the most profitable decision in history. On December 23rd, the drill hit the Ekofisk field. And it wasn't just oil. It was the biggest oil field ever discovered offshore in the entire history of humanity. Norway had just won the lottery. But lottery stories usually end badly. Venezuela, Nigeria, Iraq. Almost every country that finds a massive amount of oil falls into the resource curse. Money rushes in, inflation explodes, corruption eats the political system alive, and when the oil runs out, the country ends up poorer than before. Norway escaped that fate largely thanks to one man who wasn't even Norwegian, Farouk Al-Qasim, an Iraqi geologist who had married a Norwegian woman and worked in government. He knew exactly how the oil giants took advantage of naive countries. Together with local politicians, they created the 10 Oil Commandments. The main rule was simple. The oil belongs to the Norwegian people, not the companies, and not whichever government happens to be in power. That's how the Sovereign Wealth Fund was born. The logic is brutal. The government cannot spend oil money on the day-to-day budget. Every cent of profit from oil gets invested outside Norway. And when I say invested, I'm not exaggerating. Today, that fund owns, on average, about 1.5% of every company listed on stock exchanges worldwide. If you have an iPhone, Norway profits because they're shareholders in Apple. If you use Windows, they profit. They own pieces of the Champs-Élysées in Paris and Regent Street in London. The fund is now worth more than $1.5 trillion. It's the largest investor on the planet. And the most shocking part, Norwegian politicians wrote a rule that forbids them from touching the principal. They can only use, at most, 3% per year, basically just the interest. In other words, one day the oil will run out, but the money it generated will support Norway forever. While the world burns through profits today, Norway secured the retirement of grandchildren who haven't even been born yet. That isn't just economics, that's self-control at a national level. Let's come down from the Arctic to the country's beating heart, the capital, Oslo. Forget that old, gray, historic Europe stereotype. Oslo is modern, spotless, and growing at an insane pace. The city has been redesigned for people, not for cars. Look at this architecture. The Oslo Opera House was built for you to walk on top of it. Literally, its roof is a public plaza. Right next door, you've got the Barcode Project. Buildings that look like giant barcodes, blending luxury offices with residential apartments. But what really stands out in Oslo is its relationship with water. Even in winter, with temperatures below zero, you'll see Norwegians inside floating saunas out on the fjord. They sit there sweating at 80 degrees Celsius, and then, out of nowhere, they jump straight into the freezing sea. They say it resets the system. To us, it looks like madness. To them, it's Tuesday. And don't be fooled. For all that modernity, the past is still right here. This is where the original Viking ships are preserved, centuries old, reminding you that before Teslas and tech, these people were crossing the world in open wooden boats. Leaving Oslo, we cross the mountains and head for the west coast. Welcome to Bergen. With around 290,000 people, it's the country's second largest city, but it feels like one big village. There's just one detail that defines life here, and you'll feel it the moment you step off the train: raining. Bergen carries the unofficial title of Europe's rainiest city, and it's not an exaggeration. It rains, on average, 240 days a year. In 2007, they set a bizarre record: almost 3 straight months of rain without a single dry day. Blame geography. The city is surrounded by 7 mountains. When warm, humid air from the Atlantic hits those stone walls, it's forced upward, cools down, and collapses into rain. But people in Bergen don't let it break them. The classic line here is, "There's no bad weather, only the wrong clothes." Life doesn't stop. The fish markets stay open, and kids splash in puddles like it's summer sunshine. And in the middle of this endless damp, we find Norway's most famous postcard, Bryggen. At first glance, it's just a row of charming crooked wooden houses. But the story here is power and money. For 400 years, this wharf was the headquarters of the Hanseatic League, essentially a mafia of German merchants who controlled trade across Northern Europe. This is where they stored turfisk, dried cod, to ship to the rest of the world. Bergen was the Wall Street of fish. These buildings have been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1979, and the reason they're painted in bold colors, red, yellow, white, wasn't just aesthetics, it was advertising. In a place where the sky is gray most of the year, bright colors helped guide ships in and broadcast the merchants' wealth. Today, when you walk through the narrow wooden alleys, you can feel the ground tilt beneath your feet. The city has burned so many times and been rebuilt over its own ashes that the soil is unstable. But Bryggen is still standing, colorful, defiant, proving that not even all the rain in the world can wash away this place's history. Heading south, we arrive in Stavanger. Today, the world knows this city as the oil capital, the financial engine of Norway. But if you're expecting nothing but glass and steel skyscrapers, you're in for a surprise. The heart of the city, known as Old Stavanger, is the complete opposite of that modern image. Picture yourself walking through a neighborhood that feels frozen in the 18th century. There are 173 wooden houses, most of them painted white, with orange roofs and gardens that look like they belong in a painting. But here's a secret people don't always tell you. This famous district is just the tip of the iceberg. Stavanger as a whole has the highest concentration of wooden houses in Northern Europe. Around 8,000 historic buildings spread across the city, preserved since before World War II. UNESCO and the UN have already highlighted this area as a global example of preservation, and it's not just a pretty facade. Between these houses, you'll find art galleries, the Maritime Museum, and even a museum dedicated to what kept the city alive before oil: canned sardines. Yes, before energy made them rich, they were kings of the canning industry. And nearby is one of the most famous and dangerous tourist spots on Earth, Preikestolen, a massive square cliff hanging 600 meters above a fjord. No rails, no fences, no guards. If you trip, it's over. The Norwegian philosophy is simple. Nature is dangerous, and your life is your responsibility. They won't build a fence that ruins the view just because someone might act careless. It says a lot about how they think. Freedom with responsibility. Heading north again, we reach Trondheim. In the past, this is where kings were crowned. Today, it's where the future gets built. It's a university city, packed with technology and innovation. And Nidaros Cathedral, dark, massive, imposing, is Norway's national sanctuary, built over the tomb of Saint Olav, a Viking king. But if you want to see something that doesn't look like Norway at all, you go to Ålesund. In 1904, the city burned to the ground. Instead of rebuilding the traditional wooden houses, they brought in young architects obsessed with a new style at the time, Art Nouveau. The result is a city that feels like a fairy tale, full of towers, ornaments, and stone details, spread across several islands out in the sea. Visually, it's one of the most unique cities on the planet. And finally, before we return to the raw wilderness, we have Tromsø, the Paris of the North. It's the largest city above the Arctic Circle and a meeting point for Northern Lights hunters. In winter, the city lives under a bluish darkness. The lights from homes and streets reflect off the snow, creating an atmosphere that feels unreal. This is where you truly feel the isolation of the far north, without losing the comfort of a modern city, complete with high-end restaurants and a lively nightlife. Now, in Norway, getting from one city to the next isn't just a straight shot. You don't drive across the country, you take on the geography. The land is so jagged, so carved up by water and mountains, that building roads here feels like a challenge to basic logic. Take the Atlantic Ocean Road. It doesn't cut through land, it skips across the sea. It's a chain of bridges linking tiny islands, where the North Atlantic can slam waves into cars during storms. On a clear day, it's often called one of the most beautiful drives on Earth. But if the weather turns, it can become one of the most terrifying. And when they can't go over the landscape, they go through it. Norway is the land of tunnels. They have the world's longest road tunnel, 24 kilometers. It's so long they built caverns in the middle, lit in blue, so drivers don't fall asleep from boredom or spiral into claustrophobia. All of that just to get you to the fjords. Geiranger Fjord, Neri Fjord. The names are hard, but the view is easy to understand. 1,000-meter rock walls dropping straight into green water. Waterfalls spilling off the tops of mountains. Sailing through here makes you feel small. The scale is geological, humbling in a way that makes human construction look like a toy. But money and scenery mean nothing if everyday life is miserable. And this is where Norway really separates itself from the rest of us. There's a custom here that shocks first-time tourists. Parents walk into shops or cafes, and the babies stay outside. That's right, infants nap in strollers on the sidewalk, out in the cold, with no adult hovering over them. And it's normal, partly because, according to them, fresh air is good for a child's immune system, but mostly because social trust is absolute. No one is going to take the baby. The idea that someone would harm a child on the street is so unthinkable, it doesn't even cross their minds. The sense of safety runs deep. Houses without walls, doors left unlocked in smaller towns, kids walking to school alone from an early age. And they actually have time to enjoy that life. Work-life balance is sacred. By 4 in the afternoon, offices start emptying out. No one stays late to impress the boss. The point of work is to finance free time. They call it friluftsliv, a hard word that basically means open-air living. Rain, snow, wind, doesn't matter. Norwegians go out anyway, walking through the forest, hiking mountains, skiing, and there's even a law called allemannsretten, the right to roam. It says you can walk and camp almost anywhere in nature, even on private land, as long as you don't disturb the owner. The land belongs to everyone. Norway looks perfect, and on paper, it almost is. The highest human development index in the world, a full democracy, wealth that's broadly shared. But that kind of perfection comes with a cost. It's expensive, where a beer can run you $15. It's a place where winter darkness can weigh on the mind, and where people's reserved nature is sometimes mistaken for rudeness. Norwegians value personal space and silence. They're not going to strike up small talk with you at the bus stop. But maybe that's the real secret. Respect. Respect for nature. Respect for other people, enough to leave a baby sleeping outside. And respect for the future, saving money instead of spending everything today. Norway is proof that, with the right conditions and the right mindset, humans can build paradise, even in the coldest place on Earth. If you enjoyed meeting this frozen giant, hit like and subscribe to the channel. Is there any other impossible place you want to see here? Tell me in the comments. Every week there's a new video about the most beautiful and most contradictory places on the planet. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.